Hey, everybody. This is Dr. Lori Shemek.
And I'm Omar Cumberbatch. You're listening to This Podcast Burns Fat. Hey, Lori, how are you doing today?
Hi, Omar. I am doing wonderful. Yeah. Just excited about our guest today. I'm like, oh, we have this wonderful guest, Tracy Pleschourt. And I'm also like, oh, I need to do my newsletter, write an article. So
Yeah.
lots of stuff going on. But yeah, she was wonderful. You know, she's a great guest to have on. She really is a student of her own work, you know, if you know what I mean. She stopped overeating, over drinking, and created metabolic health for herself, literally mastered it. And so she coaches people all across the country that want to really transform themselves. And so that's what I really loved about her. And she's got a lot of energy, a lot of great information.
Yeah, no, I definitely really enjoyed her. She was dropping so many gems on us, and I know the audience is going to get a ton out of it.
Yeah, exactly. I do too.
Yeah, so let's jump into it.
Okay.
Hey, Tracy, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Good. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for stopping by, Tracy. We're excited to have you today.
My pleasure. My pleasure. This is like the highlight of my day, getting to talk.
Thank you. That's so nice. Thank you. Yeah, we have been looking forward to you coming on our show because you really have a lot to share in terms of helping people get right in their mind, if you will, in terms of weight loss. And you are the founder of Self-Made You. Correct. And which I think is very cool. It's, I mean, everything that you're doing is really a benefit to so many people. But if you could just like clue us into that and your story, and you also, I know, have a weight loss story as well. So
I do. Yeah. So I'm a former advertising executive turned life coach, which obviously is not the normal career path that you see coming out of the advertising and marketing world. But thankfully, I had an opportunity to kind of mold cultures, work with clients, work with employees or our talent. And I really fell in love with those kind of connections. And at the kind of pinnacle part of my career, decided that I wanted to move back home and really enjoy my kids before they left for college. I saw that light, at the end of the tunnel. It was quickly approaching. And I thought, if I don't do this now, if I don't make this shift now, it's very likely that I'm going to end up with some regrets. And that does not work very well for me. The feeling of regret is not one that I love living with. So I made what some people probably thought, it was a crazy decision at that time, leaving, a six-figure career and starting my own business. And quite honestly, at that time, I didn't even know what business I was going to start. I just knew that I was being called for something more. And I did have a life coach of my own at that time. And I was very, very passionate about purpose-driven businesses. And I really could relate to other working, especially at the executive level, women who were yearning for something more, but didn't know how to kind of monetize purpose-driven activities or passions. And so I set out to figure that out and really help other women create this roadmap. And first and foremost, find out what they're passionate about and why they're passionate about that. And then how do you monetize that? And so that's where the journey began. And, just simply by being very vulnerable and telling my story about why I wanted to leave corporate America, I got, a following from that, and then recognized some of the tools that I had learned from my own life coach, how I wasn't as equipped to teach those tools, but I knew that they would be applicable. So I pursued a life coaching certification that was kind of like I laugh when I say this because it really wasn't buy one, get one, but it came with a weight loss certification. And So I learned some really cool things about weight loss and how really it starts at the level of your mind, just like any other obstacle or any other goal. It all starts at the level of your mind, and how to really kind of mesh the best practices of life coaching with the best practices of weight loss and deliver that became my passion. And so what I went for was to be equipped with life coaching skills. And I ended up with kind of this value added that took off. I could have never expected for my clients or my audience to watch me lose weight and come knocking on my door with the real specific need of show me how to lose weight in that very unique way. And so that's where my program, Self-Made Mind and Body, was birthed from. And we do coach on a lot of other things outside of weight loss, but I use a lot of the same skills, the same concepts in any, goal or any sort of desire that my clients have, whether it's healing relationships or it's climbing, the corporate ladder. It really does all start at the level of your mind. So I have a methodology that I teach that literally applies to everything in your life.
No, that's awesome. So tell us how you did it. I mean, and a little bit about where you started at, where'd you end up, and how were you able to really sustain that level of weight loss for such a long time?
Yeah. So I, not unlike, I think most Americans out there, have dabbled with every trend, every diet. If there's something new, I'm first in line to try it. And what I didn't realize at the time was that box checking is easy. You don't really have to think about it. You don't really have to understand it. You just have to go and do it.
Yeah.
And so, with Weight Watchers or, some of the other big diet programs out there that we're very familiar with, they hand you kind of this prescription. This is what you need to go and do. But what gets missed is why you're in the place that you're in the first place. How did you get to be in this place of, overweight or unable to lose weight? What is causing that? Understanding kind of the thoughts that you're having, the feelings that are created from those thoughts, and the behaviors that led to that result is hugely, hugely important to know, because when you know that, now you can create like belief around, oh, that's how that all unfolds. Okay, so then it would make sense that you could reverse architect that same unfolding to actually create something that you want. When you see how you've unintentionally created something, it makes creating something with intention really, really easy, especially if you have a framework to follow. So that's just it. I can relate to so many people with the story of trying and failing at a lot of different types of diets. And it wasn't until I understood myself and understood more of the science behind how my body actually works, how it prefers to operate from a metabolic standpoint, was I able to actually make some meaningful, sustainable shifts. So Self-Made You it's a school that teaches the very simple math and science behind, how does your brain work? What is your brain made up of from the standpoint of where your thoughts come from? We have like a primitive part of our brain, and we have the prodigy part of our brain. And, the awareness of where thoughts come from, especially fear-based thoughts, and how we react from those fear-based thoughts is everything. Because in my case, that led me to being overweight. I had a belief that I could never lose the weight, that I had so many failed attempts that I was just, doomed to be overweight for my entire life. And my primitive brain was so bought and sold on that thought, and it really wanted to be right, that I felt defeated. And when I felt defeated, I showed up in ways that did not contribute to weight loss. It actually contributed to weight gain. So I guess a very long way to answer that is I learned about myself. I learned the simple math around my mind and the science of neuropathways and the science of metabolic health. And I've really created some nice, easy to understand frameworks that I teach to my clients. And it finally makes sense to them. And that's everything.
Wow, that's definitely powerful, Tracy. So let's just say we have a listener who is really struggling and feel, like you said, defeated and discouraged and really giving up on ever losing weight, because that's what the primitive brain essentially is dictating, right? The fear. Yeah. What would you say, how would they overcome that obstacle?
Yeah. So I would want them to really understand that feeling of defeat, where that's coming from, that is a very normal part of being human, that you have that part of your brain that is feeding you fear-based thoughts because it's trying to keep you safe. If your primitive brain wasn't doing that, there actually would be a problem. So I want to really normalize and neutralize the fact that that is happening. And I also want to applaud that person for recognizing what it is that they're feeling, because that awareness is always the first step. And it's such an important step to have that awareness. But after they understand, okay, so I have a part of my brain that offers me thoughts that makes me feel afraid. And then I go and I, open the pantry door and start perusing for snacks and feels like I can't stop myself. And this happens every single night at 7:00. Okay, well, that's good to know, to see that, how that unfolds in black and white. And I actually teach my clients how to literally create that framework, what thought is coming from the primitive brain that's making you feel deprived or making you feel defeated or making you feel overwhelmed, that leads you to certain behaviors like walking into the kitchen and opening up the pantry and almost eating against your own will. And this happens almost every night at 7:00. So we actually put that in the framework so they can see it. And they're like, yep, that's exactly what I do. That's me. Okay. So how else could we choose to think about the exact same circumstance? Because you do have the choice. You unintentionally are believing these thoughts from, long ago messaging, indirect and direct messaging that we've got as children, that we've carried through and created beliefs from. And we don't even realize it, but these are happening very subconsciously, kind of running in the background. So we want to heighten your awareness. So for me to be able to show you in black and white that you're having this thought about this circumstance. So it could be your weight is the circumstance and your thought is I'll never be able to lose the weight. Okay, well, do you think that it's possible that maybe you just haven't been taught yet? Is there a possibility, any possibility that maybe there is something out there that you just don't yet know? Let's just consider that for a minute. And often we can talk through this where you can get kind of that buy-in. They'll start to be like, it's possible. Yeah, maybe it's possible that there is something out there that I have never been taught. Okay, how does that thought make you feel? That thought might make them feel hopeful. Well, feeling hopeful and feeling defeated are two starkly different emotions that lead to starkly different behaviors. And so then we put that in black and white and we start to create this framework of intentional thinking and how intentional thinking leads to different feelings that then lead to different behaviors. You just cannot argue that, especially when you see it in black and white. And then when they start applying it in their life and they see it working, it's like magic, for a lack of a better word. It's like magic.
Oh, I just love that, because what you're doing is you're essentially cracking that door open.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so it's such a privilege to come alongside of people and to share, this message. It worked in my life. It's worked in hundreds and hundreds of my clients' lives. And the most beautiful thing about it is that it doesn't only have to be applied to your weight or your metabolic health. This could be applied to absolutely anything in your life. And you quickly recognize how circumstances are not happening, to you. They are very neutral. You can actually use circumstances to recognize how you are thinking and how you are feeling unintentionally and intentionally. You can make them work for you, no matter what the circumstance is. And that's a really, really powerful belief that you can strengthen if you start to adopt these kind of practices. And that belief, you'll never find yourself in the victim role ever again when you have that kind of a belief. And that's what's so life-changing. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That is awesome. That really is. And, so what would you say then to a skeptic who is like, yeah, I've heard this all, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I would ask them to just humor me in giving me a circumstance and sharing very openly, very vulnerably their thought and feeling around that circumstance. It could be anything,
like alcoholism or food addiction,
or today is the day of this recording is August 31st, right? I mean, it could be something so benign as that, to be quite honest. And I would ask them, what is your thought about that? Or how do you feel about that? Most people will lead with the feeling because that's easier to articulate. So they'll say, well, I'm sad. Okay, why? And the answer is always going to be the thought that they're having. Okay, so they might say, because summer is almost over, or summer is coming to an end, right? And it's crazy because I had a group call today and I had people from Arizona on the call and I had people from Minnesota on the call, and they both had the same thought, which generated two totally different feelings. The people from Arizona were like, woohoo! And the people from Minnesota were like, wah, wah, wah.
Yeah, you're in Texas. Woohoo!
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. But so that just kind of goes, I think that will kind of clearly illustrate that it's maybe a little bit more than just a thought. It's a story that we tell ourselves that generates the feeling. But I would ask you, okay, so do you like that feeling? If, let's say, you're mourning the loss of summer, and that mourning or that loss is making you, get short with family members or start to kind of hyper focus on all of the things that have to be done before, the calendar turns to the new month, or you start to scroll social media because, there's also, along with this loss, there's a little bit of overwhelm that you just don't want to you don't want to deal with any of those unwanted feelings. So you'll find, if you really get honest with yourself, you'll find that there's buffering happening. If it's an unwanted feeling, you almost always are trying to numb it or run away from it or distract yourself, from it. And that almost always leads to net negative results. So for that skeptic, I would just ask them, how does that make you feel? If it is an unwanted feeling, and then I would ask them, okay, and if I was a fly on the wall, what would I see? How would I see you behaving? What would I see you doing? What would I not see you doing? What would be the narrative going on in your head? And when you add all of that together, what do you create for yourself? If it's an unwanted feeling, it's probably leading to behaviors that get you unwanted results. And so we can take that exact same circumstance of today and ask him, how do you want to feel about today? And it doesn't have to be the other side of the coin. You know, they're feeling sad or they're mourning the loss of the summer. It doesn't have to be, you know, joyous. It could just be, maybe I just want to feel neutral. Okay. So what is a thought? What's a belief or a thought that makes you feel neutral or even indifferent about it?
So
I love that.
Yeah, no, I definitely love it too. And it makes a lot of sense that, you know, our unwanted feelings can lead to like destructive behaviors and such. So
Right.
you teach a person how to make better choices in essence, because one of the things that I think our show is really good about is trying to at least provide frameworks of what is like a food that's going to be better for you and then what's not going to be so good for you. So do you get
Yes,
into that at all?
I do. So, because I come from the world of marketing and I really love to be clever, I teach our clients a framework. We call it the 4 basics, and it's SELF. So at Self Made You, we teach people how to understand themselves, the SELF. And so,
4 basics of losing weight.
yeah, it's the 4 basics that apply to any change, but it really did. It was birthed from the weight loss program that we have. But quite honestly, I'm so convicted in the fact that if you don't have metabolic health, you just really can't function at an optimal level in any regard.
Is absolutely correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, you know, I always say, in earnest, that if we all ate optimally and lived a life of healthier choices, our world would be different. We'd have more peace, you know, happiness.
I completely agree with you. I mean, because studying metabolic health, we know that it has far greater benefits than just weight loss. It had, mental clarity, energy, you have more stabilized moods. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And so it has effects on your relationships. But the 4 basics that we teach, which I've talked a lot about, the S, which is solving the mind math, that is recognizing those dramatic primitive brain thoughts that you react from. That is the gist of the solving of the mind math and how you can be intentional with your prodigy brain. The E of self is eating the foods that fuel you. Everybody is fueled uniquely. We give you some guidelines that we highly recommend: limiting your sugar and flour and increasing your healthy fats. So we do give guidelines, but we also really encourage you to find what fuels you, because everybody is unique. So eating the foods that fuel you is the 2nd basic. The 3rd is learning how to collect data so that you make your decisions from data, not dramatic thoughts. If you don't have data to make your decisions from, to make decisions on what you're going to eat, when you're going to eat, how much you're going to eat, maybe how long you're going to fast in between your meals, you will make those decisions from dramatic thoughts. So we teach you how to collect data, how to collect your blood glucose and how to interpret that, and your ketones and your measurements and your body weight and on and on and on. Data is so critically important to making good decisions.
And we're lucky we have tools to do that now.
Exactly. And then lastly, fasting. And we teach people how to fast so that they can become they can use it as a tool to become more metabolically fit. We use it to teach how to get your insulin balanced. Insulin is a hormone that, if it is in your bloodstream, it's very difficult to tap in, if not impossible, to tap into your stored body fat as a source of energy. So we teach the importance of balancing out insulin levels. And through doing that, you can do that through fasting. And intermittent fasting, in my opinion, is a great tool. And so we teach our clients how to do that. So the SELF, I believe, has really huge value in any sort of change that you want to make. And I would just underline, it's sustainable change when you're doing it in that way.
What you mentioned, mind math, not mind map, but mind math. What is that? MATH. Yeah.
Yep. So that is the formula. So it's your thoughts lead to your feelings. The feelings drive your actions, and your actions create your results. And so it's literally the thoughts plus feelings plus actions equals your results every
I love
time,
that.
100% of the time. So if you can look at it as just simple math, kind of combined with the science of your brain and neural pathways, and then the science of your body, your metabolic health, you will start to understand yourself. You will start to accept yourself. You will normalize things. You will no longer feel like you're some special, broken unicorn out there, right?
Right.
Like, it is very normal, but you have to understand it to be able to normalize it. And so it's just the mind math is just a framework that we came up with, because we are more of a online institution, and we want to teach the science and the math. We want to have evidence-based, concepts that you can really get behind.
I really love this, Tracy. Yeah. And, you actually, to show how powerful it is, you were able to lose weight and you stopped drinking as well.
I did. Yes.
Yeah. So
and
I wanted just to bring that up. Yeah. And I wanted to bring it up because a lot of people struggle with both.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you feel like maybe you're addicted to food and you have been able to maybe will your way through a different type of eating pattern, very often that addiction will kind of be redirected to something else. And that's what happened in my case when I was, kind of dipping into the buffet of all different diets out there. And I was white knuckling my way through some of them. I just turned one addiction into another. One kind of morphed into the other. And so I turned to alcohol as my way of buffering my feelings. And it wasn't until I understood how the mind math plays out, until I could see it in black and white, that I could understand what was actually happening and how it was so applicable to my overeating as well as my overdrinking, and mind math is always happening. And it's not in and of itself, it's not a problem. It becomes a problem if you are consistently creating results that you don't like. You always have the prerogative. You always have the choice of whether you like your result or not. My over drinking was a result that, there were a lot of results coming from that. And I, at one point, just decided, this is not what I want to continue to do. But I had to solve it at the level of my mind. I couldn't just, stop going to happy hours or, stop buying the Chardonnay. I had to understand it. I had to solve it at the level of my mind. And I'm sure there's people listening right now that hopefully that really just hit home, because believe me, I tried removing myself from the, circumstances, and I tried to white knuckle my way through, not buying it or, whatever it may be. It's like, you have to understand why you're going for the drink in the first place. Why you're so afraid of deprivation. That was something big for me. I was so fearful of ever feeling deprived that I would make sure that feeling was never going to show up. And so I was so proactively making sure that it would never show up because I was so afraid of it. Well, deprivation or feeling deprived is just a feeling. Why am I so afraid of it?
That was going to be my question. Yeah.
I learned, I have the capacity to feel that. That's just a human emotion. It's not this deep, dark hole that I thought it was. But I will also say that comes from a lot of messaging. I think you could pull 100 people on the street and ask them, do you want to feel deprived? Most people are going to be like, no, no, thank you. Well, it's no different than an emotion of, that's on the spectrum of any emotion, right? We're meant to experience life through emotions. They're meant to be experienced, but we often avoid the negative ones at all costs. And it's to our detriment. I didn't want to feel deprivation, so I would cut it off at any inkling that it might show up. And I would find myself over drinking. And, it's I finally came to the realization that feeling deprived is not a problem. Feeling deprived is coming from a thought like, I want that, I can't have that. And that's not even a true thought. That I can't have that. Sure, I can have that. I just am choosing not to have that. And what are the reasons why? And if I have fact-based evidence to lean into, data to lean into versus dramatic thoughts, it's going to make a lot more sense. I'm going to be able to have that conversation with myself. But it used to feel like an argument that the rebellious Tracy would always win and she would end up over drinking. And now it just makes more sense. It's a much more calm conversation because I understand it now.
That is really wonderful, Tracy. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. And one of the things that I know that path as well. I mean, I'm definitely someone that everyone who listens to the show know I likes to partake and whatnot with the liquor. So
caffeine.
One of the things, caffeine as well. Yeah. So I think that's one of the things too that I hope that you could shed some light on as well, because you obviously did work your way out of that. But was it something that you did cold turkey? There's a lot of pain that's associated with giving these things up too. Like, as you mentioned, that people don't want to go through the process. Is there a secret to your process and how you were able to get out of it?
Food as well.
Yeah. I would say, it has a lot to do again with that, almost that rebellious side, where come hell or high water, nobody's going to tell me, including myself, what to do and what I can or cannot eat, what I can or cannot drink. And I really started to work my way into trusting myself by creating what I call protocols. So I would make a decision ahead of time. So my only agreement with myself was that I was only going to have a drink or indulge in, my favorite snack if I made the decision ahead of time to do it. That, in other words, I wouldn't have knee-jerk reactions. I wouldn't react in the moment. So it really required me to use a different part of my brain, really looking at the data and understanding how do I feel after I eat or drink that? Do I really want to feel that way after eating or drinking that? When you're not in the moment, you're going to make way more reasonable decisions. Your intellect is high and your emotions are low. But when you're in the moment, emotions are high and intellect is low. So the key is making your decisions ahead of time. And that does not mean I have to make the decision ahead of time to not drink or not eat anything. No, make the decision ahead of time based on what it is that you really want. Make sure you like your reasons and then follow it. And I promise you, you will get different results because you're making the decision with your prodigy brain when intellect is high. You're not making decisions from that fear-based brain. And so just starting there, you can really move mountains by just that simple step of making a decision ahead of time and following it. And it doesn't have to be restrictive. It doesn't. You can say, I'm going to go to that happy hour and I'm going to have 2 drinks. And I would get really specific. What are the drinks that I'm going to have? Right. And maybe how many waters am I going to have in between? And then keep the commitment. That's the key. That's the key to the success, because then afterwards on the drive home, you get to have the conversation with yourself about how you kept that commitment and how good that feels and how easy that actually was. Right. And there's no regret sitting there waiting for you.
That is the thing. That is the key. Your information is just amazing. And then just on the heels of that, what you're talking about essentially is taking responsibility for your results, right?
Exactly.
And so I was going to follow up. That was my last question for you, was that, but you kind of led into that.
Yeah. Well, people always ask me, what does it mean to be self-made? Because I like proudly wear my little self-made baseball cap. And that's the way I define it, is that you take responsibility for your results, whether they're unintentional or they're intentional. That is what it means to me to be self-made. Right. And so we've got students that are actively working to become self-made. They are understanding how these unintentional results happen, and they take responsibility for them. And they dive into intentionally creating the results that they want and taking responsibility for that as well. And I would say even beyond that, they model this behavior of being willing to feel it all and being willing to take that responsibility. And other people, they just can't help but be, attracted to somebody who is self-made. So therefore you impact other people's lives. And so that's kind of the whole, I guess, definition, in my opinion, of what it means to be self-made. And I think it's ongoing. I don't think that there's a finish line either. I think it's just a constant evolution.
No, absolutely. That was fantastic.
Yes.
So Tracy, do us a favor so that we can keep up with all the great stuff that you're doing.
Yeah.
Give us your website, your social media handles. How can we keep up with all the interesting and new things that you come up with as Self-Made You?
Yeah. So we're on Instagram. It's self_made_ and then it's just the letter U. That's the Instagram handle. You can find us. Our website is www.self-made and the letter U.com. We've got all sorts of freebies on our website. We've got the mind math framework, and we actually teach you. We have a very clear description of how to use it. That's totally free. We've got a free podcast. We've got some fun quizzes on what your diet superpower is and how to actually activate that superpower. So lots of good stuff on there as well. So those would be the two places that I would direct the audience.
Oh, that's wonderful. Tracy, thank you so much for stopping by. You've, I know, impacted many people, so we appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Our pleasure. Have a great night.
Yes. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of This Podcast Burns Fat. We're so excited to have you as a listener, and we're hoping that you've really enjoyed the content as well. And if you did, please run over to iTunes and provide a rating and or review. It will go a long way in helping us continuously build our listenership up so that we can provide you with excellent content regarding fat loss, weight management, and just an overall healthy lifestyle. Thanks so much. Have a great night.